So here we have a very interesting video from Ben Shapiro. Now, this video is about Elizabeth Warren. Now, Elizabeth Warren has been shelling out a lot of innovative policies and specific policy positions and plans that have solidly put her in a number 2 spot in my book after Bernie Sanders. Now, Ben Shapiro is actually going to make a point here that I want to expand on as well. But this plan that she has proposed is a plan of massive student loan debt forgiveness. I think it's like $645 billion of forgiveness, and it's for people whose households make less than $100K. So it's a really sort of revolutionary policy. It's a great one, very certainly, and Elizabeth Warren has a lot of these plans, and the funding is very, well bedrock set, where she has the 2% wealth tax on estates with over $50 million, returning the estate tax number back to the Bush era number, George W. Bush era numbers. And so she's got all of these different policy plans to raise the money for those things. So Ben Shapiro, of course, is coming here to rip on her. Now, I believe actually a factoid is, I believe Elizabeth Warren was one of his professors at Harvard, I think. I may be wrong on that, but I feel like that's true. So here we're going to check this out now. Of course, the title says Fox Cahantis makes insane new proposal. So keeping it classy, very classy, a lot of facts, not many feelings, right? Not a lot of feelings there.
Elizabeth Warren, our Native American princess, who once wrote a recipe for Pow Wow Chow to demonstrate her Native American bona fides. That Pow Wow Chow recipe was apparently a New York chef-based recipe for crab bisque, a traditional Cherokee dish about crabs roaming the fruited plains of Oklahoma. In any case, Elizabeth Warren is trying to jump out to the radical left. She's trying to out Bernie, so good luck with that.
That's actually I actually agree with that point. I do think that what Elizabeth Warren is trying to do is, now the radical left is a bogus label, but I think that Elizabeth Warren is certainly attempting to out-left Bernie Sanders. I think that Elizabeth Warren is trying to establish herself as more left-wing than Bernie Sanders. I do believe that that is true because we see her continuously shelling out all of these awesome policy ideas, and so it's very obvious that she's really trying to cement herself as a left of Bernie Sanders. So I actually agree with that point for sure.
She was, over the weekend, suggesting that President Trump must be impeached.
The report is absolutely clear that a foreign government attacked our electoral system to help Donald Trump. He welcomed that help. And then when it was investigated by our own federal authorities, Donald Trump took multiple steps to try to obstruct justice. Equal justice under law. No one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States. It is the constitutional responsibility of Congress to follow through on that.
I mean, it's the responsibility of Congress to follow. Like, she knows she's never going to have to vote on this. This is one of the beautiful things about being a Democrat in the Senate running for president. There are 90 of you, and you have a minority in the Senate. So no matter what you do, you can vote for Trump's impeachment, get all the credit, and never have to actually live with the consequences, politically speaking.
So notice his response is immediately confrontational and antagonistic, right? So what Elizabeth Warren just said there was 1,000% true. It's like, yeah. By the way, the Mueller report is literally begging Congress to investigate and to decide on whether or not to impeach Donald Trump. He's literally begging Congress to do that. He's begging them. So what Ben Shapiro's response should be here is, yeah, Elizabeth Warren is right. Now, there's a caveat here that I entirely believe that Elizabeth Warren is doing this as a political stunt because, there are a lot of people who now turn to her as people like Nancy Pelosi and other Democratic leadership in the House and some in the Senate, some Senate leadership don't want to impeach Donald Trump. They look at Elizabeth Warren now, they're like, wow, I'm a big fan, I'm going to donate. I saw people doing it. So it's certainly something she's doing for politics, but on the actual substance, she's 100% right, of course.
So Elizabeth Warren pushing for impeachment. She's trying to push to the left of Bernie Sanders. Sanders has not actually commented formally on impeachment at this point, so far as I'm aware. And now she's rolling out another proposal. She rolls out a proposal every day because she figures, okay, at some point, some of these have got to make some headlines. I mean, come on, guys. What do I have to do here to get some attention? I mean, I already did a DNA test, and you just made fun of me. So now I'm just going to roll out a proposal every single day. Every single day. It's like when her campaign is like when my son wants a sweet from the closet but doesn't want to tell me.
Okay, so he goes on to talk about his son wanting to get candy and lying about it, so we're going to skip ahead of that.
Is now proposing, the senator, to try and get attention. She is now proposing to wipe out Americans' college debt completely.
No, that's actually not true. That's false. So there's about $1.6 trillion in student loan debt currently, which is a huge amount, by the way. It's insane. But she's only proposing, I believe it's $645 billion to be forgiven. So totally false. It's not even half, actually. It's a huge, massive chunk. But he's lying.
College debt forgiveness, okay, which would actually be a violation of the Constitution of the United States. That would be a full-on violation of the Takings Clause. The Takings Clause suggests that I cannot simply, as the government, declare all private debt to be null and void. That would be me taking something of value from you without just compensation, not even for public use. That's for private use, right? You get to keep the benefits, and it's not going to the government. The benefit doesn't go to the government. Eminent domain is the government needs your house because they're building a highway, and so they compensate you for the house. Eminent domain really was not supposed to be the government takes my house and hands it to you because you are more capable of paying higher taxes because you're adding a second story onto the house. And certainly it's not, the government just feels like bulldozing the house because the government feels like bulldozing it for no reason. Well, that's what she is talking about right here.
No, that's totally wrong. So I've never heard the phrase the takings clause, but I looked it up, and apparently it's just a clause of the Fifth Amendment that says that, no private property should be taken without just compensation or, due process, in the United States. So, I don't know if that's just like a conservative type thing, because when I looked at it, it looked like just like the Heritage Foundation had it. So I'm not even sure if that's really a well-established clause or not. You know how there's like the all the different clauses that exist, the free exercise clause and everything like that. So all the different clauses that exist in the Constitution. But here's what's hilarious. I mean, I was just reading this New York Times article about this one, and this is really hilarious. So read this. Look, it says, a Warren aide familiar with our higher education proposal, noting that the vast majority of student loan debt is held by the federal government, said the government would simply cancel the eligible debt on its books. Doing so would affect more than 42 million Americans and eliminate all student loan debt for more than 75% of borrowers. For debt held by private companies, the government would, quote, work with the borrower and the owner of the debt with the goal of elimination, Ms. Warren said in the Medium Post. So what he just said was total bogey. He's lied multiple times in this one segment. He said that her plan was to completely eradicate all student loan debt. False. Then he says that her plan is a violation of the Takings Clause, which, again, I've never heard it titled that way before, but that's saying that, it's the clause in the Fifth Amendment that says no private property will be taken without due process or just compensation. So what this clearly is it's not a violation of your Takings Clause, because they're going to work with private companies that hold some small fraction of the debt, when, as is clearly said, the vast majority of student loan debt is held by the government itself. So no, there is no Fifth Amendment jumping in here when it comes to this. You just lied and made that up, and it was a very weird point to make in the first place. But you gotta be careful about stuff like this, man. Again, dude, just read this. Super simple stuff that this guy is coming out here and he's lying about through his teeth.
Is talking about a violation of the Takings Clause.
No.
Simply
no.
forgiving all college debt. Now, this is stupid in 1,000.
It's not forgiving all college debt. Why do you keep saying that, Ben? That's false.
In 1,000 ways. Let me read you what her proposal is, and then I'll explain why this is so incredibly dumb and counterproductive and doesn't fulfill even what it is attempting to do. So she has proposed to wipe out student debt and tuition at public colleges. She unveiled on Monday her proposal for easing access to higher education. It would spend $1.25 trillion over 10 years to eliminate up to $50,000 in student debt with household incomes under $100,000. Okay, first of all, I will note, this is already a wealth redistribution that actually favors people who are middle class or wealthier. Because who do you think is going to college? It's mostly people who are middle class or wealthier people who have higher income potentials. And
people who are wealthier are already not going to have problems with paying off their student loan debt. But the idea that low-income people don't go to college either is obviously false, and the middle class is something that should be very much concerned with as well. So I actually think that this plan is not enough. So I think that just having it forgiven for households with under 100K a year, that's way too weak, because there are so many middle class. I mean, dude, if you have two parents who are just like teachers in California, I think the starting teacher pay is like 50K. So if they're a couple years in, you're already making over 100K in a household. Well, that ain't shit. And the thing is the middle, like, student loan debt and healthcare costs are like this too, by the way. They're both so expensive that the middle class is still of concern when it comes to these issues because they're so overbearingly expensive. So wealthy people don't have any student loan debt to forgive because their wealthy parents have already paid it off. So that's total bogey. And then low income people do go to college, and so do middle class. And by the way, and we'll let him, we'll go on here, but there's also another part that I have to show you.
Higher income trajectories. So you're talking effectively about taxing low-income people in favor of middle and high-income people.
False. So if we just read this one, it says Miss Warren's sweeping plan has several planks. She would pay for it with revenue generated by her proposed increase in taxes for America's most wealthy families and corporations, which the campaign estimates to be $2.75 trillion over 10 years. In addition to eliminating undergraduate tuition at public college and universities, she would expand federal grants to help students with non-tuition expense, create a $50 billion fund to support historically black colleges and universities. So again, as it says, she would pay for it with revenue generated by her proposed increase in taxes for America's most wealthy families and corporations, which the campaign estimates to be $2.75 trillion over 10 years. So again, let me repeat too. Her plans include funding these kinds of this specifically and other programs that she proposes through a 2% wealth tax on estates with over 50 million in wealth, and then also re-upping the estate tax to George W. Bush levels. So again, we've caught this guy lying like 4 times.
She says she would allow states to make public colleges tuition free. There are already states that do this, like University of Tennessee. And she wants to spend $100 billion on expended Pell Grants to defray more non-tuition expenses.
Awesome.
She wants to simply wipe out all of this college debt.
No,
her plan would scale
true.
back relief for people with incomes above $100,000 and would end it entirely at the $250,000 level. She said her proposal would benefit 95% of the 45 million Americans carrying student debt and wipe it out for 75% of them. She said that this would stimulate the economy by improving credit scores. That's so funny. I love that. So we're going to eliminate debt that you're unable to pay to improve your credit score. In other words, we're going to game the credit score system. The credit score system is, I took out a debt. Now I have to pay back that debt. Every time I pay back that debt, my credit score goes up. Every time a debt collector is called, my credit score goes down. Her solution, what if we just forgive the debt and then that increases your credit score? This is the equivalent of when the city of Los Angeles decided that South Central Los Angeles had too much crime. And if they just called it South Los Angeles, that would fix the problem.
All right, I have no idea. Again, conservatives have some weird fetish with analogies. I'm not really sure what it is. They think that you can compare things like universal health care to just colors of sprinkles on ice cream or some shit. But none of that is true whatsoever. And I don't understand how he's drawing. If you have a debt that is owned by the federal government that is unjust and overbearing and ridiculous, and we can forgive that debt, and then it'll spur the economy because people will then be able to start spending the money that they would have spent on those student loan debts elsewhere in the economy. They're getting it rolling. I don't understand how's that gaming the system. I don't really understand that. I mean, you shouldn't have to pay tens upon tens of thousands of dollars to go get a higher education. You really shouldn't have to do that. We should stop looking at education as a business. It's pretty disgusting, if you do ask me.
No, the problem is you're not paying your debts. The problem is not...
But how are you supposed to pay in a debt that's so unjust? That's, again, owned by the federal government. These are federal government-owned debt, as I just read to you. There are a vast majority of student loans are owned by the federal government themselves. So people are unable to pay those debts because they're so insane.
That your credit worthiness goes up if we simply forgive your debts. It's insane. And then she says this would increase home buying. Great. So the people who are incapable of paying back their college debts, we should definitely make it super easy for them to take out home loans. Maybe we could call them...
Wait, whoa. Where did you make that connection, though? The reason why it would be easier for them to get homes is because they now no longer have those debts to pay off that were so overbearing and unjust that it was barring them from being able to purchase a home. And I watch it, so I know what he's going to say, but where did you make that connection? Look at what he's going to do, the devious guy.
Like, I know these aren't prime borrowers. Maybe what we should do is probably call them subprime borrowers. And what we could do is have the government subsidize subprime home loans to people who are incapable of paying off their debts in other ways. And then we could grant them these subprime home loans with government subsidies. And we could incentivize private businesses by saying that if those subprime home loans are not paid back, then the government will bail you out. It'll be totally fine. I feel like this would be a really good plan for fixing the mortgage system. Subprime home loans provided by the government for people who are not creditworthy. What could go wrong? Nothing. Probably everything will be
So,
fine.
so what he's trying to do here is he's trying to draw a connection between the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis with somehow bailing out people who have insane college debts. I don't understand the connection here that he's trying to make, because there is none whatsoever. So what you're doing is you're removing that unjust debt that is burdened upon and placed upon the person who went to school to get a higher education, to get a higher paying job. And then once you do that, they then become prime borrowers. That's the thing. So they're not subprime. No one's granting them subprime mortgage loans, and nor are they subprime borrowers. They are now prime loans that will be given to people who are not eligible for subprime, and they would instead be, eligible for actual prime mortgage loans, because then they have their job, they're able to pay money, and instead of having this vampire debt on them, they're able to reroute those funds towards homes. So I don't understand the connection here, because there isn't one. In one situation, you're talking about giving very shitty loans to people who are, not good, don't have good credit, they don't have any money to put down, and they don't have an income. You don't even verify if they have an income. And then you give those people loans, and oh look, it blew up in the face. But in this situation, you're looking at removing tens of thousands of dollars of unjust debt placed upon someone, and then what you do is, what she's saying is they'll end up being able to buy homes because that debt is then removed. There's a very big difference between relieving that specific pocket of debt that is held and giving a subprime mortgage loan. There is no line to be drawn whatsoever from this. And I don't know what he's trying to do, but this video was just absolutely terrible. So let me know your thoughts on this down below.